همیهنان گرامی سلام گرم دارم خدمت همه شما. در برنامه امروز می‌خوایم از زبان سیاستمداران با تجربه آمریکایی بشنویم که ایالات متحده در قبال مجاهدین اشرف چه تعهدی داره. اونها توضیح میدن که عمل نکردن به این تعهد چه پیامدهایی داشته و حالا برای جلوگیری از تکرار کشتار اشرفی‌های بی‌سلاح و جنایت علیه بشریت چه کار باید کرد. کشتاری که به قول هواردین توسط تسلیحات آمریکایی و سربازان عراقی صورت گرفت که توسط آمریکا آموزش دیدند. و پس از این کشتار هم به قول مایکل موکزی دولت عراق شانه‌های خود را بالا می‌انداخت و به لیست گذاری مجاهدین در آمریکا به عنوان بهانه‌ای برای اینکه اقدامی نکند اشاره می‌کرد. حال به گزیده‌ای از سخنرانی‌های مایکل موکزی در نیویورک و هواردین در پاریس گوش می‌کنیم.
You know, it seems as if we've come together many times to discuss the plight of MEK and particularly the plight of the 3,400 residents of Ashraf. Of course, that's not how it was supposed to be. In 2003, when coalition forces invaded Iraq and encountered the residents of Ashraf, the Ashraf residents peacefully surrendered the weapons they had, and they had both heavy weapons and light weapons to defend themselves, but they surrendered them willingly to coalition forces. And they received in return a guarantee that they would be treated as protected persons under the Fourth Geneva Convention. In fact, that guarantee was signed in behalf of coalition forces by a U.S. general. They received identity cards that carried the telephone number of the military police commanded by another U.S. general, General Phillips. And as I'm sure you know, because we've heard the story several times, an earlier administration, in the belief that it would help open a dialogue with the mullahs, had put MEK on the State Department's list of foreign terrorist organizations. And so as a precaution, the FBI went in 2003 and 2004 and evaluated each of the residents of Ashraf to make certain that none of them was a terrorist. And in each case, the FBI certified that in fact none were. The Iraqis have been acting increasingly at the direction of the Iranian government now that the United States has withdrawn from Iraq, and the Maliki government, indeed, Nouri al-Maliki himself has now decreed that Ashraf must be closed. At first, he wanted to force the residents of Ashraf back to Iran or to scatter them within Iraq so they could be picked off one by one by the end of 2011. But he's agreed to stay his hand for a couple of months, provided they relocate to a military outpost that was abandoned by U.S. troops when they left Iraq and was subsequently looted by the Iraqis, that goes by the name Camp Liberty. Camp Liberty. Even though the space at Camp Liberty is a tiny fraction of the space that the residents of Ashraf have where they are, even though there are no medical facilities at Camp Liberty, no recreational facilities, even though the details of how the residents of Ashraf will obtain food and drinking water have not even been worked out. We've been told, you've been told, the residents of Ashraf have been told by the U.S. State Department that this is in fact progress, that the residents of Ashraf must recognize this progress and make up their minds to move to Camp Liberty, even though arrangements to resettle them have not yet been made. You know, I once had an uncle who the family said died of progress. That's right. He went into the hospital, and each day the doctor used to come by and say he was showing progress. And then one day he died. And we all concluded that he must have died of progress, because that's all he was showing, according to the doctor. The State Department reminds me of that doctor. But of course it's even worse than that, because the potentially fatal disease that the residents of Ashraf have comes from a U.S. designation of MEK as a foreign terrorist organization. Notice I say the U.S. designation. That's because the European Union has removed MEK from any such list. The United Kingdom has removed MEK from any such list. And as you've heard, the only other country that classifies MEK as a terrorist organization is Iran. The Iraqis, who act simply as pawns of Iran, have justified their cruel treatment of the residents of Ashraf and their insistence that the camp be closed by pointing to the terrorist designation that was imposed by the State Department. In 2009 and 2011, while a U.S. Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, was in country, some 47 residents of Ashraf were massacred by Iraqi troops using weapons that were supplied and vehicles that were supplied by the United States. Regrettably, U.S. forces were directed to withdraw just before the Iraqis went in both times. And of course, the identity cards and the splendid letter guaranteeing their safety that the Ashraf residents received, well, regrettably, those were not bulletproof. And so the U.S.-made bullets and armored vehicles that the Iraqis turned on them were able to overcome even those identity cards and that guarantee. And when an outcry was raised and there were demands for an investigation and punishment of those guilty of murder, the Iraqis were able simply to shrug their shoulders and point to the U.S. designation as an excuse for doing nothing. Even though MEK has said repeatedly that it stands, as you've heard, for regime change in Iran, the establishment of a secular, democratic government that grants equal rights to all, including women, that is nuclear-free, and even though a United States court in Washington has told the State Department that the public record that it presented in court was not enough to justify continuing the designation, and that they must either present other evidence or else remove the designation, the State Department has purposely dragged its heels for more than a year and a half since that ruling and told the Ashraf residents that they must trust the efforts of the United States and of the United Nations to resettle them. Now, some have described Camp Liberty, even some here, where the State Department has urged the residents of Ashraf to go. Some have described it as a prison. Well, I have to tell you, I resent that description because when I served as Attorney General, one of my responsibilities was to supervise the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. And I will tell you that a prison, as tough a place as it is at least a place where both the prisoners and the guards are bound by rules. A prison is a place where we send people as punishment, not for punishment. But there's another kind of place to which Camp Liberty might be compared, a place where even the ironic name Camp Liberty makes you remember it. And that is a concentration camp, a place where people are sent to be broken in body and broken in spirit. The Iraqi army has already given the residents of Ashraf a taste of the liberty that they have in mind for them at Camp Liberty. And this is the force that's supposed to protect them at Camp Liberty. You know, the 18th century philosopher Edmund Burke said that all that's necessary to assure the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. I think what we've come here this morning to say is that the people in this room and others who are not in this room do not intend to stand and do nothing. We've been heard in the past, and we intend to continue to be heard until the residents of Ashraf, the members of MEK, and all Iranians can remove the current regime and return their country to the glorious civilization that it once was and that it will be again. Thank you very much.
let me make it clear, as we have in our discussions, that the United States of America is not only morally but legally responsible for what happens to the 3,400 unarmed civilians in Ashraf. Each one of those civilians has a signed piece of paper by the commander of the United States Armed Forces, which disarmed them in exchange for that piece of paper, which says that we will guarantee their safety. When the Iraqi troops in 2009 and again in 2011 attacked the unarmed civilians in Ashraf, they killed a total of 47 unarmed people. Those people were murdered with United States weapons and by troops who were trained by United States trainers. But I believe that we have a legal obligation, as defined by not only the courts in the United Kingdom, in France, and in Europe, which they recently gave yet another decision, but by courts in the United States of America to delist the MEK and take them off the terrorist list. Now, why does this matter? This is simply not a matter of resistance to the mullahs. I have talked to a number of people in a number of governments, and so have a lot of other people in this panel, about who might take the 3,400 unarmed Iranian civilians as refugees. And one of the issues that comes up is that they are on the terrorist list of the United States. There is no legal basis for them to be on the terrorist list for the United States. Our court, the District of Columbia Federal Appeals Court, has said so. And the State Department has done nothing for 18 months to give clarification to that order. I always believed that the United States was a nation of laws. Where is the rule of law in the United States if our own State Department refuses to abide by the court decisions of the United States of America?